Hi there, my name is Kristen Tripp. I'm the Executive Director of the Da Vinci Experience Science and Arts Summer Camps. So, we have briefly gone over the safety tab in the staff website, but we're just going to breach on a few specific safety topics. Now, we have already talked about the general first aid information. We've talked about the buddy system. We've talked about building emergencies and CDC posters, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the first aid information. Now, CITs and counselors, typically a first aid incident is not something that you should have to deal with. As a lead counselor above the age of 18, you may be expected to take hand in these types of first aid incidences, but otherwise, it is not an expectation that minors and counselors and CITs should be handling a lot of these incidences. If you see them, you can absolutely, if you're the first person to see something happen, you can call for a teacher to come help, and you can absolutely provide moral support to the camper. However, you will see a lot of incidences throughout the camp day that have really no severity to them whatsoever. A child might fall and they might lightly scrape a knee. They might not have any visible wounds at all. It was a really, really minor fall, but they are seeking a little bit of attention for this fall. Now, it's important in these types of situations that we acknowledge big feelings, that we understand that's a bummer. We hear you. We understand. However, we do not want to perseverate on minor injuries that children are sustaining. What it does is it promotes them to hyper focus on them and get much more flustered about them than they need to. It also makes other campers around them realize they get attention for having injuries. And then what you will see is a lot of over dramatic feelings for other small injuries or self inflicted injuries to get more attention. So it's extremely important that when injuries are minor, that we do not make a big deal out of them. What we want to do is acknowledge feelings and then redirect to a new activity or topic to help children get their mind off these things. Now, if there is a minor injury that is resulting in a little bit of blood, that's okay. That sometimes happens. Sometimes scrapes have a light amount of blood. It does not mean that it warrants a full incident report or for the child to go inside. First aid should be outside. At that point, a CIT or counselor under the age of 18 can turn that over to a lead teacher who can grab the first aid kit. There will be a very small first aid kit incident log that you can just check off, like, oh, this day we had a small cut that was bleeding a little bit. That teacher can put on their gloves, they can wash out the cut, use antiseptic if necessary, and put a band aid on. Now, obviously, in these kinds of situations, we once again want to acknowledge the feelings because, of course, this is bleeding and it probably hurt a little bit, but we still want to have an acknowledge and redirect method. So after the child feels their feelings, they get their wound addressed, they get a little extra attention from a teacher. Now let's move on to something else. If you start giving out a lot of attention while you're band-aiding, you will see a lot of kids come over for a band-aid. Now, at Da Vinci, we do not give out band-aids for any wounds that do not have blood on them. However, if kids know that and they see a ton of attention for band-aiding, they'll start self-inflicting their wounds or telling you that they're bleeding to get a band-aid. So we do not want to overinflate a small injury, even if it does require a band-aid. Now, from there, if there is an incident where a child is has fallen and they seem like they're limping a little bit, now their head really hurts, they've fallen on their neck or their head, they're bleeding a lot, or there's some type of severe emergency, that is when a director needs to get involved or a lead teacher on site. So in this case, the child should be brought inside with a buddy and a counselor, and at that point, the director or maybe the teacher's coming in, but at that point, the director can take it from there. If it's a really serious incident, the teacher might also have to help as well, and it might have to be a director teacher tag team. If an incident like that occurs, then we can address that when the time comes. A good example is we have kids that come in a lot of times after hitting their head and they want an ice pack. Their head is okay. The director writes an incident report and then sends that over to families. And the kid just wants to spend about 15 to 30 minutes inside to just cool down, sit in the dark, relax. And then if they're feeling ready to go back out, they do. If they're showing other signs of issues or maybe concussion, that's when the director might call a parent or guardian, or have them stay in a little bit longer to observe them. And we see that happen all the time through the camp season, typically a version where there is no concussion symptoms. However, we've had instances, and a good example is one girl who broke her arm, and it was very much the bone was separated and sticking out in a wonky way, which was very unfortunate. And the director and the teacher had to tag team because she was sitting on the teacher and you could not move her because of the pain she was feeling. So the director was filling out the incident report, calling parents, calling paramedics, and helping siblings who were in the room with the child while the teacher was holding the child. In those kinds of incidences, it would take two adults to work through that, but typically only one adult really needs to be in the room while writing up an incident report with a child with a minor injury. If it's a bloody nose or a missing tooth, same thing. Sometimes a teacher might have to stay in to help out while the director writes an incident report, but once the bleeding is stopped or the child has calmed down, they can typically leave, and only one adult really needs to be there. Counselors at that point really don't need to be there either. Now, incidents reports are typically written by lead teachers and directors. We typically will have some in the go bag outside as well as inside to just write up the report. If you are a teacher or a counselor and you see the incident happen, the lead teacher or director will ask you to explain what happened, but it is the lead teacher and director's job to write these incident reports, sign them, and present them to parents. Now, if there is a major emergency outside happening and you are a counselor or a CIT, or a counselor under the age of 18, I should say, and you see this emergency happen, you're the first person on site. It is not your responsibility to handle this situation. At this point, you want to call over a lead counselor, lead teacher, teacher, director, whoever might be there, and that person will run over to address the issue. If it's serious enough, that teacher or adult will send the counselor to a director to call the parents, to call 911, to come out and assist, whatever it might be. And at that point, the teacher is going to take over until the director jumps in. If it is an incident that requires CPR, AED machines, or anything of the sort, the teacher will administer that. And if there is an AED that needs to happen, the teacher will send the counselor or CIT to go get the AED machine in the building and bring it back to them while they stay with the camper. Now, typically, what is great is that kids are very, very durable and they like to have risky play, which we promote at Da Vinci, but typically understand their limits and strengths. So we don't often have that many incidences at Da Vinci that are severe. And we want to keep that up. So in order to keep that up, we want to make sure that we are monitoring our playground and allowing kids to be safe, but not over monitoring that they can't have any risky play. For instance, climbing up slides or going down slides is fine. Kids climbing on the jungle gym equipment is fine. However, it is important as a teacher that you're monitoring, but you do not want to stifle risky play. Risky play is an extremely important developmentally appropriate thing for children to do in order to build their strength, to build their fine motor and gross motor, and create independence, confidence, and learn. So we want to make sure on our playground we are allowing kids to take risks, but we want to also monitor for safety and make sure that they are okay. Now, if you have any questions about first aid, what to do, when to do it, or what your role might be, please email me at davinci.experience@gmail.com or ask me at orientation and we can go over some of this information. Before we finish this video, I'm going to touch very quickly on incidences that don't result in injury, like behaviors. If there is a child who has a behavior, whether it be that they have flopped on the ground and won't move, whether they are starting to try to get violent with another child, whether they are running away, or whether they are exhibiting some other type of undesirable behavior, it is not a counselor's job to address this. This is a teacher's job. If it's happening to a counselor or a counselor's seeing it happen, it is their job to call over a teacher. If the teacher can easily resolve this issue, the teacher will do that right then and there. If not, if it's a behavior that needs more help, a teacher will have the counselor or somebody else run to grab the director or lead teacher on site to help assist in this incident. It's extremely important that counselors and CITs understand that it is not their responsibility to deal with children that are exhibiting aggressive or undesirable behaviors. And teachers, it's also extremely important for you to understand that you have a director or a lead teacher on site that can help support you with these kinds of behaviors. And if they are extreme enough, then we will have to expel the child. So it's important that it's reported, documented, and that everybody understands what is happening. So the director can talk to parents and potentially, if need be, talk to the office members at the building. Lastly, if a child's exhibiting those behaviors, but it's not to the point of expulsion, the director and teacher can work together to come up with a plan for that child throughout the day to help them be more successful. Of course, if they are unable to be more successful throughout the day and continue to show these behaviors, expulsion is something we may have to discuss down the road, but we typically at Da Vinci try to do some predicting and preventing and some plans for the child specifically to help them, whether that be a visual schedule, whether that be a sticker reward system, whether that be reinforcement of positive behavior. Every child's different, and we will address that as it shows up. However, it's important for teachers to know that if a child is exhibiting behaviors that are consistently disrupting the classroom and making teachers' jobs not just harder, but unmanageable, that is when they need to be talking to the director. The director can take active documentation type steps to expel that child to make sure that we are a safe environment for not just other campers, but also staff members at the summer camp. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to vinci.experience@gmail.com.